Hello, and welcome to today's webcast, What Keeps Senior Living Executives Up at Night? I'm Lois Bowers, Senior Editor of McKnight Senior Living, and I'll be your moderator. The senior living industry is expected to triple in size by 2040. Your mind most likely is filled with many questions, such as, are my residents safe and happy? Is my organization set up to succeed now and in the future? Are my departments working well together? Do we have the right capital allocated? Dude Solutions recently gathered insights from hundreds of senior living executives related to these questions, and today we're going to hear the results of the company's 2019 Senior Living Benchmarking Report and how you can use this information to be successful. We'll hear from our speakers in a few moments, but first we have some housekeeping matters to take care of. First, I'd like to let you know that the slides are available for download. To download them, please see the red Resources tab on the upper right part of your screen. And if you think you're experiencing audio difficulties with this broadcast, please first check the volume control on your computer. We found that this is the most common cause of hearing issues with presentations like this one. The sound should come from your computer speakers. If the volume control doesn't appear to be the issue, then please click the red Test Your Connection button under the slides. If necessary, scroll down and click the Chat Live button on the Test Your Connection page to receive additional assistance. Please only keep one browser window open on your computer to prevent echo. Also, we will have time for questions and answers at the end of today's presentation. If you have any questions about the information presented, please feel free to send them directly to us at any time during this hour by entering them into the Ask a Question box below the slides and clicking on the red Submit button. Today's program is made possible by support from Dude Solutions, provider of the Works Hub. Please visit the company website at dudesolutions.com after this webcast. Finally, this session will be archived and available on demand shortly after this live broadcast. You can access the webcast again at no cost, and others can experience it at the first time, again at no cost, by simply going to the registration page to enter this studio. The web address is mcknights-1010-19webinar. You also can use the link you received via email or visit our website, mcknightseniorliving.com, and click on Events in the navigation bar at the top of the page, and then on Webcasts in the drop-down menu. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about today's featured speaker. Francis Glynn is Director of Environmental Services at Londonderry Village. He's overseen several multi-million-dollar construction projects, managed manpower needs, and created policy and procedures to support his supervisors. Casey Jones is Vice President of Plant Operations and Assets for Presbyterian Senior Living. He is responsible for leading the organization's environmental services function while overseeing construction and other capital projects. And Rachel Karakni is Senior Implementation Specialist at Dude Solutions, where she is the team lead for senior living implementation. I've seen their slides in advance, and I can tell you they have a lot of important and helpful information to share. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Francis, Casey, and Rachel so they can begin their presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Lois. Welcome, everyone. Glad you are able to join today. So just a quick overview of the agenda and what we're going to be going over today. As Lois did the welcome and introductions, a couple of key themes that we're going to be highlighting today are going to be demographics all the way through capital planning as we dive into the results of our senior living operations report. And then our hope is that we will have quite a bit of time left at the end for Q&A. So without further ado, hopping into the 2019 Senior Living Operations Report. The goal of our presentation today is we want to inform, benchmark, and strategize. So here at Dude Solutions, we conducted a comprehensive survey nationally across several sectors of the senior living and long-term post-acute care industry to answer one question, and that's what keeps senior living executives up at night? We got hundreds of responses in, and we found some really interesting trends. And our hope of today's presentation is, again, 3 parts. We want to inform you on what the current thought is on a number of high priority topics. We want to benchmark how you are currently doing in relation to the market on those topics, and then strategize for what changes your organization should prioritize in the future. So today, with only having an hour, we're, only going to take a glimpse into some of those results. And, one thing to note is this report will be released later this month in about a couple more weeks. So first, just to kind of give you some background into the demographics of who our respondents of the survey were. So we had 343 respondents, and it was a wide range of responses from all different profit statuses, organization sizes, and service offerings. So the respondents specifically ranged from members of the C-suite to executive directors, VPs of operations, so all critical decision makers in the senior living operations industry. So when we start to break that out a little bit further in looking at the profit status, so 52% of respondents were for not-for-profits, 41% were for-profit, and 7% from government agencies. So next up, looking at the variation in locations. All right, so locations, one location is at 36%. 22% fell within having 2 to 5 locations. 17% had 6 to 15 locations. 6% had 16 to 25 locations. And 19% had 26 or more locations. And then when we take a look at care level, okay, so 100 were CCRCs, 94 were independent living, 98 were assisted living, 240 were skilled nursing and rehab, and 128 were memory care. And one thing to point out there is you might be wondering that as far as the care level goes, kind of those numbers that we have displayed here, you're probably wondering why that doesn't add up to 343. And that's because of the locations that have multiple levels of care. All right, so hopping into the different themes that we're going to be taking a look at today. So on the agenda, I know we had displayed kind of the key 6 themes that we're going to be looking at are market dynamics, okay? So market dynamics is where we asked questions around market forces and how your organizations are differentiating themselves to compete. We also looked at human capital. So this was focusing on your staff and departments and how do they communicate, what areas that turnover affects, and outsourcing statistics, plus more. In facilities, we dug into how decision makers view the impact that their facilities team makes and explored key areas to focus your benchmarking. We also looked at technology. So technology is one of those areas that's constantly evolving, and it's been seen to affect, crucial aspects of your operations in a positive way. So we examined what aspects decision makers are already using or exploring technology to help manage their operations. On the safety and quality side of things, so, we're in an industry where compliance, reigns supreme. So we wanted to look at how decision makers look at safety and quality and how they centralize all of those activities. And then last but not least, the last theme being on capital planning. So wanted to explore here how these executives are planning to ensure the success of their organization, not only now, but 20 years on down the road. So hopping into our first theme here on market dynamics. So again, the questions we looked at here were how your organizations are differentiating themselves to compete. So one thing that we found is that a resounding 97% of respondents believe that consumer demands and expectations are increasing. Of course, this isn't a shock, and we know it's easy to see that consumers want the nicer accommodations, the increased physician access, and dramatically different food service than what has historically been provided by the industry. So, in summary there, they want more amenities and they're not afraid to ask for it. Another thing that came to light here is that, of course, different types of housing options are also in demand. So people are looking for the life plan communities, standalone, assisted living, and independent living rentals, and home and community-based services. So with these rising consumer demands, it's definitely important for facilities to be focused on differentiating. And so when respondents were asked what were the top 3 ways that people included as differentiators, the top 3 responses were customer service at 82%, staff capabilities at 78%, and culture at 71%. And then on the other hand, the bottom 3 were management efficiency at 49%, technology at 53%, and lifestyle and wellness programs at 56%. Another thing too, as far as like a trend that we noticed is, not surprisingly, the responses to effective differentiation, they did vary by service line. So for example, skilled nursing and memory care providers were more likely to rank staff capabilities higher, while CCRCs and life plan communities were more likely to favor lifestyle and wellness programs than other care settings. So I'm going to bring in Casey and Francis here. And Casey and Francis, one thing that we wanted to ask the two of you is, were you surprised by any of these findings? And if either of you could share how your communities are looking to differentiate themselves.
Certainly, Rachel. I was not necessarily surprised with the bottom 3. I think they are very typical. When I look at the top 3, I find that I think culture comes first, from the standpoint that the culture of the employee, treating your employees right, will in itself lend to customer service, will lend itself to staff capabilities. One of the things that we are working on with our staff capabilities is when it comes to our facilities department, we're focusing more on the soft skills than the hard skills, because we want them to be technically proficient. We want them to be subject matter experts, but we want to ensure that they have the soft skills to provide the customer service and the interaction with our seniors.
Yeah, very interesting. It's interesting to see how those top 3 do very much all go hand in hand. All right, and Francis, anything to add there on your end?
Yes, the bottom 3, as Casey said, did not surprise me. The top 3, with the staff capabilities, we are focusing on those soft skills. And I think the difficulties that are coming along with that is the access to staff that has those hard skills, with the construction and service industry being as doing as well as it is today. It's hard to find those people with those harder skills. So reaching out and building programs to mentor and create and build those harder skills in someone with the softer skill traits.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you both. So that kind of moves us into our next theme that we wanted to take a look at, and that's human capital. So in the report, the questions around human capital focused on staff and departments, such as how do they communicate, the effects of turnover, and outsourcing. All right. So when looking at human capital, according to some sources, 50% of facility leadership will retire in the next 10 years. So these are the people who are keeping your operations running. So we wanted to dig in here and ask executives how they are preparing for this facility tsunami of sorts. So about 40% of surveyed organizations do not have a succession plan for facilities managers. So when you think about this, that's pretty alarming because these are the employees who make sure your operation stays functional and in compliance. They keep the doors open and are leaving the vast majority of the industry, isn't prepared. So when they leave, they're not just taking their stuff with them. They're taking the years of organization knowledge, procedures, data, all of those things that aren't documented. So well under half of all respondents have detailed policies and procedures, well-documented equipment maintenance and replacement histories, preventative maintenance plans, and facilities maps of critical infrastructure. So well under half are, reporting that they don't have those types of things. So a trend that we did pick up on, though, is that for-profits are far more likely to say they have detailed policies and procedures for facility-related processes. And one thing that we did to kind of dive a little bit deeper into this topic as well is that when we asked them how this affects their operations, the top 3 areas that they reported impacted by employee turnover were staff efficiency at 71%, resident satisfaction at 70%, and staff satisfaction at 67%. So when it comes to kind of moving into the next phase of talking about human capital, so interdepartmental communication, one key area identified by the senior living decision makers for organizational success was that interdepartmental communication. However, there was a big difference between the amount of people doing this well and needing improvement. So 98% of the respondents believe that it was very important or critically important that departments coordinate well with one another, but only 32% said that their departments actually did so extremely well. So, it's one of those things where we're human by nature, and sometimes we get caught up in our own silos, and that can make it hard to understand the needs and opportunities that other departments have. So Casey and Francis, how do the two of you see this shaking out at your organizations? As people leaders, how are you pushing this, to make the interdepartmental communication better at your communities?
Well, I think all of us are probably doing some of the same things, and that is, we do morning meetings where all the departments meet in the morning. We do have newsletters that they participate with, and sometimes what we would call news blips on their communities. We tend to get enraptured in what our own departments are, and I think that's normal. It's trying to break through that is, as you said, is difficult. So by creating events on the community where the departments actually work together on a particular event, bringing them all to maybe the dining room one day to help serve, bringing all the departments into an event to help serve the seniors is a way to get them to interact, because some of the nurses don't always see the maintenance staff in a good light and vice versa. So it's really about, I think, team building. It's about keeping the daily morning meetings active and keeping everybody sort of in front of each other is the approach that we're trying to take.
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned, Rachel, siloing. Siloing is something here on campus that we're experiencing just from the decentralization of our nursing care facilities with the greenhouse concepts and neighborhood concepts that are out there. With that brings those challenges to bring the interdepartmental communications and enhancing that. Doing that has really added the interdepartmental when you're talking from nursing to maintenance. You have those challenges that have already been there, but now you have these challenges that we're doing internally under the facilities blanket. We're doing that with those consistent meetings, the communications, but also using the devices and equipment that we have in place from mobile devices and things like that to get information out. With the different tools that are out there, we found that is important with creating that communications tool with self-service, cell phones, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So working to be more connected, and one thing that you both highlighted as far as kind of the daily or the weekly manager stand-ups, that is something that I am hearing more often than not, that communities are kind of making that an absolute thing that they're working into their day-to-day, week-to-week operations to help improve that interdepartmental communication. So great.
One area, Rachel, that we've actually made those improvements is through with the texting abilities and those communications tools. Even though they bring their challenges internally with the restrictions that campuses have as far as device use, but we found that it actually enhanced our communication by assigning those pieces of equipment to different individuals.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing. So, and kind of the last component here to the human capital piece is just some interesting finds regarding outsourcing, or interesting statistics here. So what we found is smaller organizations are what we are considering 1 to 15 locations, are most likely to spend 11 to 19% of their maintenance budget on contracting out resources. However, larger organizations, so that's going to be 16 or more locations, are most likely to spend 20% or more of their maintenance budget on outside resources. And even when we break out that the larger organizations even more, so 33% of larger organizations are spending 20 to 29% of their budget on outsourcing, and 25% are spending even more, so 30 to 39% of their budget on outsourcing. So we just wanted to share those results as well. So moving into our next theme of facilities. So in the report, these questions dug into how decision makers view the impact their facilities team makes and key areas for benchmarking. So when asked the question of, what does facilities impact most, their choices were resident satisfaction, employee satisfaction, financial performance, compliance, and revenue. So as we dug into those results, we were most surprised by this, and that's how low the percentage of people who said facilities teams impact revenue. Because I think, the fact here is that if you don't have happy residents, you don't have revenue. So it's kind of that adage of you need a well-oiled machine so that you don't waste your time fixing it rather than focusing on meaningful activity and customer service. So the trend that we picked up on here is that there's a significant disparity between for-profits and not-for-profits. So around 66% of for-profits thought the facilities team impacted revenue, and only 41% of not-for-profits agreed. Casey and Francis, what is your first reaction when you hear this? Are you shocked that not as many respondents see revenue as being impacted by facilities?
No, I think that's a genuine response. I will tell you that I have operated in multiple industries. government, higher ed, senior care, and I think it's all the same. What we think of revenue in senior care, we think of revenue as a billable or a sale that reflects a visible injection of funds. That's what we look at as revenue. What are our reimbursements? What did we make an IL sale? So that injection of funds is what we look at as revenue. And the problem that we face in facilities, and no matter what industry you're in, is a lot of times the revenue that they generate is hidden. If they replace light bulbs with LED, that's a long-term monitoring of your energy consumption. So people don't necessarily see facilities as a revenue generator. When it does say resident satisfaction, I can see the tie in. I think the view is, how fast does facilities answer my needs? How quickly do they replace my dripping faucet? That's the customer satisfaction I think they're kind of weigh that against. But when it comes to revenue, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, facilities is a very long-term process in revenue, and because you don't see it immediately, you don't think that they are a revenue generator.
Yeah, interesting. And Francis, how about you?
And those, to follow up to what Casey was saying, with the percentage on the nonprofit side, actually it surprised me to be as high as it is showing, because as time goes by and as we get into facilities has never really focused around the bottom line and the budget side of it. They were always in the customer service mode and making sure things are taken care of. And over the last 5-6 years, that has changed because of the commitment and the importance of having them on the facilities and their profit line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for sharing. So kind of the next piece of this, so we talked a little bit about impact of facilities team, and then of course, also in facilities, we want to address the benchmarking piece. So 2/3 of respondents, we found that they're doing some level of benchmarking of their facilities related data. And when we break this down, we found that 76% of for-profit organizations are benchmarking compared to 61% of not-for-profits. So, of course, top areas to benchmark being staffing at 55%, response time at 41%, and maintenance costs at 40%. Another trend here is that kind of in looking at sizing of organizations, so larger organizations, and again, larger, we're considering 16 plus locations, they were more likely to benchmark facilities-related data. So 83 to 89% of them were benchmarking, while only 53% of single locations are doing so. So Casey, starting with you, what are your communities doing to benchmark, and how is benchmarking helping you?
Well, because we're a multi-site organization, benchmarking can become difficult because you're looking at the different nuances of each building, each facility, the types of rooms that you have that you're maintaining. So some of the things that we try to benchmark that we can add some consistency to are the planned versus unplanned work orders. If you are doing more planned work orders, that should mean you're reducing your emergency work orders. And we're benchmarking our year-to-year spends, both with external contractors and equipment replacement costs. We're doing benchmarking asset inventories to understand the breadth of the inventory that we have, and then using the year-to-year kind of site-to-site work orders to try to help understand who has a best practice, what equipment that we have that is outlasting other equipment. So it's with a multi-site, you have to take into consideration all the nuances of the sites, and that's where it starts becoming a little bit grayer than what we would like.
Yeah, and I think, one thing I wanted to pick up there is, with you being kind of in the multi-site environment, you mentioned the sites being able to share best practices or pick out best practices from your findings, and kind of them being at the advantage of having those shared insights. That's definitely, I think, something that is really important. And Francis, how about you from the single site perspective?
Yeah, one of the tools we do use is the Works IQ, and that is actually our benchmarking tool that we use that gives me a look on other communities, other campuses, and where they're at, and my numbers when it comes down to my staffing requests and also my purchasing requests and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and just out of curiosity, so one of the things that I'm starting to see more and more, and maybe the two of you can share if this is something that you do at your communities, but I'm seeing more folks institute incentives for like tracking time or trying to decrease their average days open for work orders, like quarter after quarter, plus more things here. So, the incentives are kind of, I've seen them in the form of, just creating some friendly games and competition among maintenance staff, or, the facilities team, if they hit their goal numbers, maybe they're going to get a catered lunch, or, even it can just kind of help foster some good old-fashioned bragging rights. I've found that the incentives to work towards those benchmarking goals is it helps generate motivation and the drive toward the overall goal. So it's kind of a win-win situation there. So I just wanted to share that. I'm starting to see that more and more as benchmarking becomes something that's very important. All right, so moving into the technology theme. So as we know, with technology rapidly evolving, this can affect our operations in a positive way. So we examined what people are already using or if they are exploring more technology to help manage their operations. So the top ways respondents were exploring uses for technology were 58% were exploring ways to reduce energy and utility costs, and 54% were exploring on how to track maintenance and other related activities. So in regard to, reducing energy and utility costs, these would be looking at systems to track your utility bills, monitor trends, and really try to identify those cost reduction areas. On the maintenance and other related activities side of things, so that could be as simple as a way to centralize and track all of your work orders, but that other related activities, that could go all the way into, transportation, room bookings, security, tracking kind of those other activities from an operations standpoint. So with so many, technology options to choose from nowadays, there's kind of a couple of important questions that you want to make sure you're asking yourself when you are choosing technology. And so those are going to be things like, is the vendor moving with the times? Are they able to evolve and change and adapt? Because you want to be looking for a technology organization that can grow with you, because the reality is that the way that we do work, the way that we're going to be doing work 10 years from now is going to change, and technology vendors, they have to keep up with the ever-changing industry. So once the report is released, lots more statistics coming there around the technology theme. Moving into safety and quality. So of course, with compliance at the forefront of a lot of what we do in the senior living and healthcare industry, we wanted to look at how decision makers view safety and quality and how they centralize these activities. So nearly all respondents, 97%, reported that they do conduct safety inspections. So majority at 88% perform them at least quarterly, and then 61% perform them every month. However, the biggest challenge that was reported is that organizational leaders are faced with the biggest challenge they're being faced with, is that inspections, they need a centralized system to manage it all. So from one leader directly, we heard that we need a good way to keep track of what's required, what's planned, what's been done, and what still needs to be done. So starting with you, Casey, how do you approach safety and quality audits internally, and how do you look to centralize and streamline those efforts?
Again, so as a multi-site user, we like using a consultant and a third-party inspector for several reasons. One, they come in on a quarterly basis and look at all of our communities. By doing that, I get the same set of eyes with the same set of criteria going to everywhere. Then they do roll-ups for me on a quarterly basis, and we can look at either the improvements or the reductions, and then they also bring to the table the best practices. Internally, we do daily housekeeping, and we use a system that provides us with a dashboard, and we can look at that dashboard, and it will drill down on both the tasks and the particular housekeepers themselves. We also use our insurance carriers. Ask your carriers, because there's a lot of free programs that they will run. They will come out. We use them to do infrared scans on our communities, which if you have to pay for that privately, there is a great expense to that. And we use peer reviews, where we send our own staff to opposing communities to do peer reviews. So we do all of those, and then each of these reports gets rolled up into a dashboard. And then when we meet on a monthly basis with my directors, we get an opportunity to review the dashboards and talk about where we stand and what we need to do for improvement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting tidbit there about the contacting insurance carriers. Thank you for sharing that. And Francis, how about you?
As a single site, obviously we do most of that, the inspections and quality inspections internally. One of the challenges has been how do you start to streamline that streamline your facilities department by not incorporating your quality and inspections into your maintenance department. That's been one of the challenges. We are looking at the security staff and safety staff to start doing those, and also having access to survey tools that we can assign people to, and then that data is collected and it creates that quality report at the end of the day that when you need it. But it also allows us to create those visual pie charts and things to forward on to staff and the board and senior leadership to let them know what their campus is doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great. All right, so moving into our last theme that we wanted to touch on today, so looking at capital planning, and in regard to the questions in the report, so this is where we wanted to look at how the executives are planning for the future and ensuring that long-term success for their organizations. So looking at, kind of what are the risks that people are most concerned about, 75% of respondents were at least somewhat concerned about every potential risk that was listed. So those risks being facilities failure, natural disasters, aging facilities, resident safety, and PR issues. So resident safety was actually the most likely to be selected as extremely concerning at 44%. Aging facilities was the most common concern overall, so that was ranked as somewhat to extremely concerned. And for-profits were nearly twice as likely to be extremely concerned about PR issues than not-for-profits. So a 27% versus a 15% there for for-profits versus not-for-profits. So, kind of in regard to the facilities failure piece and around capital planning, what we found that was really troubling is that because 85% of respondents are concerned about facilities failure, the vast majority don't have a capital plan that looks beyond 5 years. So single locations are the most likely not to have a capital plan beyond 5 years. Large organizations, so those being 26 or more locations, were the most likely among multi-site operators to have such capital plans for 25% or fewer of their buildings. So one might expect that with the large percentage of respondents concerned about this particular piece being facilities failure, we would expect that they're proactively addressing that issue through their capital planning process. But the results definitely revealed that most respondents do not have a capital plan that looks beyond that 5-year range. So another quote here from one of our respondents is, to properly plan for capital needs, you really need a 20-year plan. A 5-year plan just doesn't provide the future vision you need. For example, if I have a boiler that has a 20-year useful life, but I don't even address it until year 15, 5 years out, I'll never have enough to replace it in time. And I'd have zero flexibility to address equipment that fails early. I need to know starting year 1 so that I can set aside a little every year for 20 years. We never want to be behind the 8 ball and not able to do what needs to get done. So kind of then on the other side of things, another one of our respondents identified, probably one of the most common conundrums is the challenge is often this, he said. A building identifies capital needs that exceed its profits. Physical plants are so expensive when you truly project their capital needs, especially when you're working with an older building. So you have to prioritize, and the common question out there is, did you prioritize correctly? So Francis, starting with you this time, how concerning is this for you when you hear this? And what are you doing to handle capital planning at Londonderry Village?
Very concerning. Our campus is now 40 years old, and we are experiencing just that. We're doing everything possible to stay with the times, resident satisfaction, upgrading our units, doing our unit turnovers with major costs into those because of the different demand needs that are out there. But what we do here in campus to try to stay with these times is also having a tool or having equipment that allows us to monitor those capital needs long range. For the longest time, we had something that did just that, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. Now we are monitoring out 20 years because we're capturing that data on the initial input. As we replace equipment, as we update different units in different facilities in different areas of the campus, we're capturing that now so we can have that 20-year look. It's really hard to get a 20-year look when you don't have data captured. And that's what we're doing with some of the systems that we're using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we could have a whole nother webinar on, capturing data and capturing the right data. So thank you for sharing. And Casey, how about you?
With our capital, I will tell you what I find with the senior living industry is that historically you're a 24-hour operator. Your lights and doors are open 24 hours, and I think senior living has kind of come to the table late with recognizing that there are things that we can do to reduce costs, reduce energy, and save on our equipment. So I think everybody's kind of behind the 8 ball, and we're all struggling. Many of us are just now trying to put in building automation systems so we can track our use of our equipment. And when we start looking at the capital, that 20-year range is needed. Unfortunately, so many of us still today, and we are just as guilty, that a lot of our equipment we run to failure and then we replace it under an emergency plan because putting the dollar values in front of the key decision makers can be very difficult. We've actually taken to creating a scorecard where each community goes out and actually scores the equipment they have, and based upon the scores and the life cycle of that piece of equipment, we are starting to build that plan to say, okay, this equipment is in the last stages of its life. We need to be prepared to replacing it. The easiest things for us to look out are roofs. Roofs are real easy to look out on a 20-year span. P-tax, The departments are a lot harder to identify a life cycle on them. So there's a lot of equipment that we operate across multiple buildings, but you do need to have something beyond 5 years. I don't know that we'll ever get to having everything that we have out in a 20-year lifespan, but it is really critical, and it will help everybody along the way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Rachel, one of the areas that's difficult is accepting the fact that equipment has end of life, and there is an end of life date on there given to you by manufacturers. And those are really hard to accept when everything's running smooth. But as you look at your equipment, you look at your campuses, and you see end of life on these pieces of equipment, you find out in the long run that it is better to respect that, replace the equipment, and so you don't have those catastrophic failures.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up that point, because that can kind of tie back into some of the other themes that we've been talking about today. Is I know we ended with capital planning, and we're kind of just thinking about it kind of on like a one track as far as just capital planning for our specific pieces of equipment, but there's really so much more to it kind of behind the scenes, because I agree, accepting that equipment is going to have an end of life is sometimes hard to accept, but hopefully, some things that folks can be doing to help get more life out of the assets is, that technology piece. So if you're leveraging technology to make sure you're up to date with all of your preventative maintenance, you're looking at those benchmark reports, and you're doing those safety and quality audits and inspections on the equipment. It's interesting how all of these themes definitely tie in together. All right, wonderful. So we're coming to the tail end here. Just a couple of last things before I kick it back over to Lois for question and answer. Is real quick here, just wanted to display a slide about the Work Hub by Dude Solutions. So again, we are going to be releasing the operations report later this month, but until then, the Dude does offer an award-winning solution called the Work Hub. So this is a software that can help decision makers solve a lot of the challenges that we discussed today. So with the Work Hub, you can own your operations with easy-to-use tools for tracking work orders, assets, benchmarking, streamlining capital planning, like we just talked about, and helping you to achieve that higher resident satisfaction. So the Work Hub, everything lives in one, easy-to-use, streamlined desktop and mobile platform. And then also, kind of going back to that technology slide as well, we do offer another platform. It's called Energy Manager. So this is something that can help communities centralize and manage their energy and utilities. So Energy Manager, definitely gives decision makers the ability to, insight and clarity into how to locate waste, catch billing errors, and help drive their facilities' conservation programs. And then last but not least, Dude Solutions will be at Leading Age. So hopefully we'll see everyone out in sunny San Diego. Our booth number is 1848. So definitely please stop by and say hello. So with that, Lois, I will turn it over to you, and we can go ahead and answer any questions that have come in from the audience.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for all of that information. Attendees should see a question on the screen, and if you could take a minute to answer that question while we prepare for the questions and answers related to this webinar. If you do have any questions for our speakers, please type them into the Ask a Question box below the slides and click on the red Submit button. We'll try to get to as many as possible. And Rachel, if you could just remind people how they'll be able to access the report when it's done, that would be great. We had a question about that.
Yes, absolutely. So the report is set to finalize in mid-October. You're going to be able to find it on our website, and then we also will be pushing out information on LinkedIn. So as soon as everything is finalized and published, you can check out our website or LinkedIn. Those are going to be the best places to find the information.
Great. And a question for Francis and Casey. The statistics I hear about the facilities profession turnover are alarming. What are you and your organizations doing to combat this? Do you have any programs to expand employee skill sets or ramp up new additions quickly?
On our end, this is Francis. I think it's important that you're building, and we referenced it in the slides, the communications tool. The tools to make you, give you the ability to move from staff to staff to staff, because there is starting to, either aging staff is in place and they're all leaving as referenced in the slides, or, new staff, just the market out there taking staff and moving from other careers. It's important to make sure that you're putting the tools in place so you can transition those people or newcomers into your positions, and tools such as building automation tools, maintenance systems, and planning systems allow you to do that, so you can integrate those individuals quickly rather than taking a long period of time to get them trained on your facilities.
Okay.
And from our side of the house, we've been pretty fortunate that at our senior leadership level, our directors of environmental services, we don't have a whole lot of turnover. But at some of the other maintenance staff we've had, and the way we're combating that is we are using online platforms for training. We are bringing in training seminars to the staff. It can be anything ranging from basic electric to motors and motor repair to HVAC troubleshooting. And we find that if we are educating our staff are enjoying that. They want to be educated. They want to learn their jobs better. And through that, we've actually found we've got maintenance staff who are really embracing a lot more of what they need to do. And we're hoping that successfully it will sustain us and we won't have the turnover. The construction industries today are really busy, and they are a competitor to take staff from us. So that's what we're trying to combat at the present time.
Another question, how do you handle census challenges, and what are some of the best practices of your sales departments?
We do a lot. I know our sales departments across all of our communities do a lot of events. They bring folks in. I will tell you that refreshing your communities, curb appeal, will do a lot. That's where we really focus on our housekeeping and maintenance to make sure that when people are touring, that we are showing them our best side forward. A lot of our marketing folks do a really great job. I think we all are working with the challenges of competing with what a resident has at home. We're really competing with their home. We're competing with where they're coming from, and that's what they want to come to when they come to one of our CCRCs. So it's about giving them what they have today. It's about delivering it to them faster and better than what they actually have. And I think our sales departments do a really good job projecting the technology that we use, projecting the maintenance, projecting the staff that we have on campus. I think all of those in context help to be the tools that are bringing residents to the communities.
I kind of paused to that question because here on campus as a single site, we are consistently running in the 90 percentile for occupancy. And I feel that, we do that because we can, number one, the marketing team is aggressively making sure that all the prospective residents coming on site or also the events that they are appearing at off-site know what we're doing on campus with the upgrades and with the changes and the amenities upgrades that we're doing consistently, taking us into another level, to another era, has helped us maintain those numbers, by increasing square footage, and also, we talked about IT a little bit, expanding capabilities and, more towards the smart homes and things like that.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Planning for the known is one thing. How do your locations plan for possible natural disasters?
Good question. Right now,
Go ahead, Casey.
That's a good question because we are right now doing all of our emergency response exercises across our continuum. So we have a really robust emergency response plan. We do the tabletops and the drills annually. A lot of times we will do a biannual drill. So they do a lot of that planning. I meet with my DESs on a monthly basis, so we put that information in front of each other. I think as an organization, we feel very comfortable that we're set for our any natural disasters and emergency response. You know, the benefit that we have by being a multi-site is that we can share resources amongst each other.
And us being a single site, we have, our challenge was how do we get participation or reach out to other communities and campuses throughout central Pennsylvania, and we do that. We are members of the coalition, the emergency coalition here in the central Pennsylvania, and we meet on a regular basis. We're meeting on monthly, and also if we have an opportunity to get together beyond the coalition meetings, we do that. We are preparing on campuses, on our campus, just by integrating the outside resources, your local fire, your local police, and getting them involved into your campus and community. We do that with their support, and we also work with them as we create the policies and procedures for each one of those emergency plans. And consistently running tabletops and drill exercises, that's been a big change. I think it's throughout the industry. A lot of experience at the table from the military side of the house, which it comes natural, but when you're talking about nursing facilities and those areas, they're not familiar with the exercise process and the tabletop process. So introducing that it has been a challenge, but it's something that has been actually, I think, pretty fun for everyone here on campus.
Great. Well, thanks again for all of your answers to those questions as well and for the presentation. We hope everyone has enjoyed today's webcast. Remember that this session will be available shortly to listen to again online. So if you'd like to listen to it again, or if you think a colleague would benefit from the information, please write down the web address on your screen, mcknightseniorliving.com/101019webinar. We'd like to give special thanks to Francis, Casey, and Rachel for taking time for us today to frame this important issue in an understandable way for senior living providers. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Dude Solutions, provider of the Works Hub. You can visit dudesolutions.com to learn more about the company. And thanks to everyone who's listening today. Your questions were outstanding, and I'm sure help fellow listeners gain an even better understanding of this topic. Once again, thanks for tuning in. This is Lois Bowers for McKnight Senior Living.